It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I am looking forward to talking with my guest today. Joining me is Andrea Waltz. Andrea's keynote speaker, co-author of the best-selling book Go for No, with the subtitle Yes is the Destination, No is How You Get There. And she is also the founder of Courage Crafters. Andrea, welcome to Accelerate.
Hey, Andy, it's great to be with you.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining me. So take a minute, introduce yourself. Maybe how'd you start your own journey to where you are now?
Kind of a wild journey. I got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. My
daughter did as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So there's hope for her, what you're saying.
There is. Yeah. Hopefully she'll actually do something with it. I, however, did not. I wanted to be a crime scene investigator back before all of the television shows were so popular.
So you weren't inspired by Vegas, CSI Las Vegas.
Right. No. I was way before. I guess I was probably inspired by Clarice Starling in the Silence of the Lambs.
Mm-hmm.
But so that was my interest. However, one of the things that was required was to kind of start as an intern, low person on the totem pole and work your way up. And I really wanted to make money after getting out of college. And so at the time I was working my way up through Lens Crafters, and I had was assistant manager and then a retail store manager and then a general manager of the whole operation, and eventually was dabbling in training. I met my husband and business partner. We decided to launch a training company, speaking and training company, to teach our sales, customer service, management philosophies. And that is the direction I ended up going into. Not something I had ever planned, but as it turns out, I love doing it.
So what was the sort of epiphany, if there was one, about this realization about Go for No? And maybe start just telling people what the basic philosophy behind Go for No is.
Right. Well, the basic philosophy of Go for No is to intentionally increase your failure rate. And it applies really to almost everything. It certainly is a sales philosophy, and it's probably the thing that we teach most often in sales. But it's also in fundraising and innovation. It's that whole idea of failing your way to success and understanding that you have to fail more in order to hear more yeses. You have to fail more in order to innovate and take those chances and take those risks. And so what happened was after we launched our company and we were doing training, and we were training on all different ideas and strategies and topics, the Go for No strategy was the thing that resonated with our customers the most. And they always say, listen to your customers; they will tell you what they love.
Funny how that works, right?
Exactly. And so we started when we would go into break rooms and different places, and we would see posters that said Go for No. We said, okay, there's something to this. We need to focus on this particular topic, and that's what we did. Wrote the little 80-page fable and that teaches the philosophy in a story in a kind of a fun way. And really, the whole goal is to help salespeople and really anyone who wants to achieve something, who has to ask, who has to put themselves in a position of hearing that word no, to go for it, to go for no. And that's the basis for that title.
So fear of failure is in itself the biggest cause of failing, then, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly. And we're saying, hey, fail more. And we all were wonderful failures as children. We failed at everything we tried, persisted, pushed through it, took the lessons that we learned, got creative, changed things up, and got better. And yet as adults, I think whether you are an entrepreneur or a salesperson or what have you, what happens is it's kind of this feeling of, hey, I have to be perfect. I've got to do it all, perfectly right out of the gate. There can't be any flubs. There can't be any missteps. And that's just not realistic. And that's what I think keeps a lot of people from even getting started.
Yeah, we all experience failure at some point. And what you're saying is, let's embrace this because this is what teaches us what will be successful for us.
Exactly.
So is there, we sort of dig down, is there physiological reactions we have to hearing no? I mean, something that's sort of socially ingrained in us or ingrained in our DNA that this fear of failure is nurtured in us somehow?
Well, yeah, there is. And I have studied this in depth since this became, I guess, our our expertise. We call ourselves rejectologists or failure philosophers. I've studied
experts
everyone.
In failure.
Experts in failure.
Put that in your tagline. I don't think that would sell very well.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, these days, there's almost a backlash because failure has become. I think some people see it as, we're falling too in love with this whole idea of failing. And I see this written up sometimes in various magazines and on various blogs, like settle down. Let's not get too excited over failure. It's not that wonderful. And certainly there are, not to say ramifications. I mean, there are clearly ramifications. I mean, people lose investors' money, people lose businesses, people's hopes and dreams are dashed, however, that's not to say that it's just inevitable and you have a choice. You can either kind of live in mediocrity and not take some chances and risk, or shoot for the moon and hopefully you are successful in some way. So I think in all the studying I've done, there is a physiological reaction. I mean, the bottom line is this goes way back into human biology of not wanting to be thrown out of the tribe, not wanting to be rejected by our peers. And that really, if you get thrown out of the tribe when you're, depending on kind of teamwork for survival, that rejection is not good. And so biologically, I think we're wired to avoid rejection, to not have that happen. And so there is a kind of a gut feeling. And then,
to avoid risk.
To avoid that risk, to avoid those rejections. And so you have that. And then you layer in, I think, more modern feelings of wanting that perfection, wanting that approval from other people, not wanting to be judged by other people, not wanting to be seen as a failure. So all of those things working in concert affect people at various levels. Sometimes there's some social anxiety or just some general fear about, being, talking to strangers, picking up the phone and cold calling. So all of these things layer into it. And over the 10 years I've focused on this seriously and really studied this in detail and looked at it, people have this to all types of varying degrees. And so it's really up to them to kind of pick it apart and to start doing what Richard and I say, which is to start reprogramming the way you think and feel about that rejection, because that feeling is a big part of it. It's how you feel about it, and then for salespeople is how you react. One of the things I ask all the time is, when you get a no, how do you react internally in your mind? So what do you say to yourself when you get that rejection? Do you say, oh, wow, I'm doing terrible today and this is not working out? Oh, and then also, what do you do externally in your actions? How do you react? Do you stop making calls for the whole day? Do you just, it's like, that's it. I'm not contacting anyone else. I'm taking the day off from selling. When you have those reactions,
I had those days.
You're right. And then it's an issue, because obviously from a productivity standpoint, sometimes it can be, okay, I'm taking the rest of the day off from selling. I'll get involved in some paperwork and do different things. And then the next day it becomes harder. And the next day it becomes harder. And then you end up in this whole call reluctance cycle it's kind of hard to get out of.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's one of the things I want to get to eventually as we talk about call reluctance, is maybe taking a step back before we do that, though, is that, so we have the physiological reactions, which you said is probably ingrained in our DNA because we didn't want to become an outcast in our tribe, and, we depended on being a part of it for our, survival, if you will. But it seems like there's a cultural aspect of it as well, is that, we seem to be very fortunate here in the U.S., at least, that there's a culture that's more accepting of failure? Or do you think that's not? I mean, certainly we have a risk tolerance in certain segments of our economy that are not enjoyed by other countries.
Yes.
So
Yes.
So is that completely segmented, or is it sort of a broader acceptance across our society that we Horatio Alger and all these other tales that have come up that as a people, as a culture, we accept risk taking and failure more than other cultures do?
Yes, we do, absolutely. And we have made, as I was kind of alluding to, great strides in that, as I said, to some people's chagrin, actually, where they think, we've gone too far extolling the virtues of failure. I haven't, but and that's mostly because I see that the fear of failure still holds so many people back. So I think, maybe in Silicon Valley, some people feel that way. Culturally, though, absolutely. I mean, our society here in America, for sure, and we've spoken in England and mostly. We haven't really done a lot of international. We haven't been to Asia, different places like that. But so I can't speak on some of that. Although I've read that in places like Switzerland, I mean, failure is just failure just cannot happen. I mean, it is just not looked upon in a good light. And I know in England, everyone thought that the Go for No message was that they loved it, but it was also really scary for them because not something that they do. And also the funny thing about in Britain is they're so polite, and they tell me this all the time. Everyone's so polite. No one wants to say no either. So it's just this constant push and pull of trying to get people to just, hey, tell me no so I can move on to the next prospect.
So do people sort of think of this as sort of a uniquely American formulation?
I get the sense that they do, absolutely, but it resonates. I mean, Go for No sells, at least on Kindle and Amazon or around the world, and we've been translated into all kinds of different languages. So I know that it is universal, and I hear from people in all different parts of the world, even though we haven't gone there and actually done any training or anything. But I get emails, and people are just blown away by the concept, and they need it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so let's talk about the I guess changing people's relationship to rejection is really what you're doing. So what's the encouragement people should take from a no?
Yeah, well, a few things actually. The first thing is really to start to value those no's and to see the value when you get a no and try to take it not as as a personal rejection, but try to look for the learnings. And one of the things that we teach people is that when you're not going and you're avoiding opportunities to hear no. And really there's the biggest thing that happens, and this is salespeople, but this is everyone. This is whatever you want to do. If you're trying to raise money for something, if you just want to go across the street and ask your neighbor to borrow their lawnmower, I mean, this doesn't matter. If you're asking
it's life
something,
and business, right? Not just business.
Life and business. And we do two things that really sabotage, and that is we make assumptions and we prejudge what someone else is going to do. Mm-hmm. And those two things are really killers. So we spend a lot of our time on trying to wipe that off people's mental slate. So instead of doing those prejudgments and saying, "Oh, I can't call this company. I mean, they would never do business with us or with me." It is reminding yourself to go for no and putting it into practice, and just doing that behavior, and then when you have the quantity of your presentations and you can get that to a certain level, and keep in mind, if somebody is a great quantity person, if they're out there making the calls, and this may not apply to them, but the person who's so afraid of hearing no, who's so afraid of that rejection, usually their quantity is really low. And so they never have a chance to figure out where their gaps are, where their skills need to be enhanced, because they're never getting down deep into the conversations enough to figure out where their needs are, if you will.
Well, I think there's layers to that, right? What you're talking about is that one form of call reluctance that I see, and I think reps have to be really cautious about, is they'll make the call and they'll be comfortable with the person saying up front, "Yeah, we're not interested." Because to them, that's not a no, right? They're just not interested. Whereas if they actually have to then ask the follow-up questions and dig, then they might actually get a real no. And so you see a lot of sort of superficial calling that takes place because they don't want to really get in and dig. And so they'll take that first no, and that's not personal. It's that second one where they really engage and they say no, ooh, they don't want that.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. And I think that that is an example of where, people say, well, so I should just hear no over and over and over again and never get any better. And our answer is well, no, obviously, no. You want to be willing to go for no. In other words, be willing to up your quantity of calls and then start looking at, are you just taking that? Yeah, we're not interested. Doesn't sound like it's for us. Are you qualifying that person or disqualifying that person? Are you asking the questions? Are you digging into objections? And that's really where some of those skills come into play that are so important.
Yeah. So it's, again, for people listening, you have to think about it. It's not necessarily that first no. It's really the real no is the one you want. And it requires a little more effort. I mean, I think about my own experiences when I first came out of school and had a typical cold calling job, selling business to business, but selling computer equipment. But it wasn't over the phone. I was out making 30, 40 cold calls a day in the field. And I was burned out by noon every day the first couple of months because, I just couldn't get accustomed to the no's, actually.
Right. It is challenging.
So what's sort of the key for people who are sort of in that environment that are doing the right things? They're not just, doing the superficial calls, but they're asking the right questions and it's just wearing on them. What's the advice?
Right. So the advice is, a couple things. The first thing so we talk about, valuing that no and learning from it and figuring out where are your gaps so that you can improve. And so you can take what might be some bad numbers and improve in different areas. But until you get to that point, right, until you having those conversations, sometimes people don't give themselves the opportunity. But if they are out there and they're just kind of beating their heads against the wall, one of the things that we recommend, and this is just kind of a fun thing and a little bit superficial, I'm not digging down deep, but is we teach people to set no goals. So set a goal for the number of no's you're going to collect on any given day or week. And in your case, it would be, hey, go out and collect 20 or 25 no's. And when you get those no's, that's when you should celebrate. That's not when you should berate yourself and say, wow, I went to 25, different locations. I got 25 no's. I am terribly bad. It's celebrate your activity rather than just the outcome. And one of the things is a good friend of ours, he called us one day and he said, you guys are going to love this story. He said, I was out making calls. It was like Friday afternoon. It was 5:30. My goal that day was to get 10 no's. It was like in the afternoon, 5:30 in the afternoon, he said, I wanted to get that last no. I wanted to get my 10 no's and kind of reward myself for what really was a massively productive day. And he said, so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to call this guy. I've been calling on him for about 2 years now. He always says no. He always puts me off. I will call him and just get the no, and I'll be done and I'll be satisfied and it'll be great. And he said, I made the call to the guy, and the guy said, oh, Mike, I'm so glad you called me. I've been thinking about you, and yeah, let's go forward. Come in on Monday and we'll sign the deal and let's go ahead and go forward. So it's kind of funny when you make your process, whatever your process is, kind of a game and collect those no's. And you can collect no's in any given particular interaction. You can collect no's asking for referrals or if you're trying to just get through the gatekeeper and you want to collect no's trying to, find the right person, there's all different ways you can collect those no's. But when you make it a game and make it fun, you're really celebrating your activity more than the outcome or the results. And quite frankly, sometimes we can't control that outcome.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. I was just interviewing Jason Jordan, if you're familiar with him, who wrote Cracking the Sales Management Code, which is all about, you can control activities, you can't control outcomes, so manage activities. yeah, it really resonates. I mean, that's what I advocate for people as well, is, focus on the activities. And yeah, if one leads to a no, or as you said, set a goal for no's, yeah, that's like setting a goal for a yes. It's just the other side of the coin.
Absolutely. And Andy, I have to just add something here too. And this has to do with we've been watching baseball recently, and Richard is a diehard Cubs fan, and he was,
the good news, bad news.
Good news, bad news. Yeah, and he was freaking out a couple weeks ago because they happened to be on a bad streak.
Yeah, a little slump, right?
Yeah, a little slump, and now I think they've won, about 10 games in a row, and it's the best streak they've had all season. And we all as salespeople have those weird streaky periods, and you just have to remember that. And it's hard sometimes. I mean, there's just no way around. Sometimes selling is just hard sometimes. And sometimes we're just in a down period, and we just are in that striking out one after the other. And you think like, this is the end, the end is near. And it's just not. And so you have to do what you can, I think, to keep positive and to listen to motivational things, things that get you pumped up, things that keep you thinking positive, because we all have those down periods, and you just have to move through them sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Is you have to have sort of a toolkit about building up your confidence. As you said, it could be something motivational you listen to. It could be music. It could be a particular speaker, a TED Talk, or an ebook or something that you have that you can go to that gives you those basic affirmations. And actually, even using affirmations, I think, is very powerful. I think people tend to look at them somewhat askance, but I know a lot of people that on a sort of daily basis, their little affirmations at the beginning of the day are very powerful for them.
They are powerful, absolutely. It's funny that you'd even say that. We created some Go for No affirmations around courage and persistence and attitude, and all kinds of affirmations set to music just around our training to help people kind of do that reprogramming process. But I remember, my thing was I loved listening. The very first training I ever listened to, audio training, was Secrets of Closing the Sale by Zig Ziglar. Mm-hmm. It's probably still one of my favorites. I mean, it's so old school, but his stories are funny. He just doesn't take himself too seriously, and yet it was just great training. And so, yeah, if you can find some things that you love and just listen to them over and over again, it can be very powerful. Well,
you really raised a key point there, I think, is that the thing that really makes Go for No work, I believe, is that you can't take yourself too seriously. Mm-hmm. It's not you. This isn't personal, right? I don't know how do you guys deal with that issue? Because I know so many sales reps, that no at the beginning, they just internalize it, they personalize it, they think it's about them, and it's really not.
Yes, absolutely. How do we deal with that? That one is a really hard one. In fact, one of the books I recommend repeatedly to people who, and as I said earlier in the interview here, we find that people have different issues, right? It's like some people just, they got a problem picking up the phone. Other people are like, I can pick up the phone, but I just hate, when I finally get the person and I've worked really hard and then I lose the deal, I just freak out. Or it's like different pieces of the puzzle. And that taking it personally thing is challenging, because that's something that usually is pretty ingrained, and we really have to learn to value other people's opinions, just like we value our own. I tell people all the time, and especially it's kind of funny when we get like some really nasty negative review on our book, which is always funny, and I have to step back and I go, I walk out of movies sometimes because I just go, I just can't sit through it. There's books I can't finish. Sure. And when I learn to depersonalize and say this person is entirely entitled to their opinion, however nasty they may been, it actually makes it easier for me to take it. But I'll tell you this: the book that I highly recommend to anyone with that as their particular issue is The Four Agreements, and it's Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And in that book, one of the Four Agreements is to not take things personally. And it seems, how deep can he get? And he just really talks about understanding that it's not about you. It really says everything about the other person, because it's all really about us, right? And so everything in the world is about us. And when we can depersonalize and realize that that person is just reacting based on their beliefs and how they were raised and everything that they know, I think it just makes it easier. So it's important to find those tools when you can analyze where you are in the process. And so I always encourage people to create a no awareness when they first look at Go for No. How many no's are you getting? What is your reaction, your internal reaction, your external reaction? Where in the process do you fall down? Do you have a fear of other people finding out that you fail a lot and hear a lot of no's? Do you have a problem being judged by other people? Do you take the no personally? And if you can figure out where the gaps are, then you can reach out and get more tools in addition to just read Go for No and really internalize that taking action, which is really a positive, proactive step, but also what can you do just to help your own psychology?
Exactly. Well, so another question that sort of comes to mind then is I guess understanding what a no is.
Yes. And that is a whole other thing, isn't it? Especially in sales, because I think a lot of people, I hear this all the time, and I'm sure you do as well, which is, it's hard to get no's. People don't like to hear no, and they also don't like to give no's often. So I'm always telling people, be clear. If you have to say to this person, hey, I'm calling you back one last time. I want you to know that if you're not interested, if it's just not for you, a no is a perfectly fine answer. But if you could just let me know, that way I'll take you off my list. I'll never contact you again. Trying to get people to give you that no can be challenging. And like you said, what is that no? And then that comes back to that managing of the objection. A lot of times, it's not a no. It's just, I need more information. Maybe there's something that they don't understand. And so as a salesperson, you've got to get creative and finesse that a lot of times and dig into the real reasons.
Yeah, you need to listen. I think that's an important part of that, is to understand what a no really means. Or at least to me, it's I know some people that I had written a blog post about saying basically sometimes no is a no.
Right.
And I had this sort of small backlash from a certain segment of people that were like, no, when you get a no, that's the time to really start selling. Like, well, no, not really.
Right.
Sometimes a no is a no, and that's okay.
And that's okay. And we say that you're right. And we say, hey, a no is a perfectly acceptable answer, especially if you get it early. I mean, coming from Richard and I are fans of kind of a high probability selling model, a disqualification type model, if you will. Yeah. And so if I call somebody and I say, hey, do you guys ever bring your people together for sales training? And they say, nope, never done it, never going to do it. And then I say, well, okay, let's talk about that, because I'm going to spend the next hour convincing you why you're wrong and you need to start doing that. I would rather just say, all right, fine, and move on to somebody who does hire sales trainers and try to sell them on our sales training services, rather than trying to, pull this person. So that's kind of where we come from on that.
Well, yeah, there's the whole segment of sales training that's based on this theory that, the first no is never a no, and so on. And yeah, you're a business owner. I'm a business owner. When I tell somebody no, most times I like to believe, it's a no. So, because I don't have the time or energy, and I want the same thing when I sell. As I'm like you, I want to disqualify, and I talk about that in my books both my books devote a lot of space to this whole issue of disqualification, because it frees your time up to go sell to people that are going to buy.
It does. And yet, so on the flip side, there's that. And then there's, we do hire sales trainers, but no, we're not interested in you. And that's where I say, okay, now you can have some fun with this, right? I mean, now they're qualified. It's just a matter of they don't have the information. They don't know enough about you. So, you've got your work cut out for you now if you want to stick with this person and see what you can make happen. But I think just kind of understanding the difference is really important.
Absolutely. Now, in this last segment of the show, I've got some standard questions I ask all my guests. And the first one is a hypothetical scenario. Actually, you said you've listened to some episodes, so you should be prepped for this. Is a hypothetical scenario posed to all my guests. You, Andrea, have just been hired as the VP of Sales at a company whose sales have stalled out. And they're anxious to get things unstuck and back on track. And, sales turnaround, I know, doesn't happen in a day, but, you're in charge. Your first week on the job. What 2 things could you do that could have the biggest impact?
Oh, yes, I'm aware of this question, but fully unprepared. I think the first thing I would do is sit down and interview everyone on the sales team to find out kind of where they are with in my assessment of their skill level and also their passion. And if I find people that aren't passionate, that's going to be a big red flag to me. So I would really want to get to know the team, and that may not do much for a turnaround quickly, but that would be really important to me. And the second thing really is I would take a look at the intersection of sales and marketing, and I think I see that as a big disconnect for a lot of companies. And being a really small business owner, it's not an issue for me since I am sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. But I think looking at what's going on with the outreach and the outbound marketing, and compared to, what are the processes of the salespeople and what are they doing to support marketing and vice versa. I think those things would be my two first steps.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I love the thing about passion, because and when you have a turnaround situation, and I tell people that you can have a turnaround situation if you have 2 bad months in a row. You're not necessarily throwing everybody out and bringing in a new sales leader, but you're basically going into a turnaround at that point. You're going to do the things you would do if you were sort of doing a turnaround in terms of assessing your team. And that passion thing is really important, because you really are enrolling people in a mission, in a cause, if you will, at that point, to get past sort of the slump that they're in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if there's no passion, hard to make that happen. Okay, great.
It is.
Yeah, great answer. Okay, some rapid fire questions for you. So the first one is, when you, Andrea, are out selling your services, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
I think my most powerful sales attribute is just my belief in how much I think our message can help people and how quickly it can help people. So for me, it's just the belief in my product / service.
Yeah. Okay, great. Who's your sales role model?
Oh, right now, my sales role model is probably Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm sure I sleep far longer than Gary sleeps. I actually like naps. So, but he's my sales role model in his ability to produce content, to be authentic, and I just love his hustle attitude.
Right. Yeah, he's excellent. Other than your own, one book that every salesperson should read.
Well, I'm going to go back to the 4 agreements, and I do recommend that often for people who struggle with, fear, failure, rejection, all of that. It's an incredibly powerful book. And the author again? Don Miguel Ruiz. Don Miguel Ruiz. Okay, on my list. And last question for you then. This is a tough one. What music's on your playlist these days? Oh, gosh. I like alternative. So 30 Seconds to Mars and My Chemical Romance is what I'm listening to most often. Wow. Okay, My Chemical Romance. Gosh, kind of old school alternative. I was going to say old school out. Yeah, I hadn't heard them for a while, but excellent. All right. Well, good. Well, Andrea, thanks for being on the show. Tell people how they can find out more about you. Come to goforno.com. There's a no quotient quiz, videos, blogs. It's a great place to dig in if it's something that they're interested in. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. An easy way to do that is to make this podcast accelerate a part of your daily routine, whether you listen on your commute, in the gym, or make it part of your morning sales meeting. That way you won't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Andrea Waltz, who shared her expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show.
If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.